So, are you ever lost for words at the most crucial moment? When it's time for the big pitch, do you strike out? Is your idea of a good elevator speech asking someone what floor they're going to? Our speaker is a graduate of the University of Delaware with a communication degree in interpersonal and organizational communication. He's a prize-winning speaker and known as I Have Material. An award-winning author of 4 business books, and somebody who once panicked when the CEO of his 3,000-person company ran on the treadmill next to him. We were all given one chance to make a good first impression. Grab the big sale, get the promotion of our dreams, or simply nail the presentation. Do you realize how much of this success is contingent on the first few moments? Sometimes measured in minutes, other times in mere seconds. Helping to show us that elevators don't always have to go up or down, up and down, our division governor is going to show us how important our mission is as club officers to get on this elevator to spread the message of Toastmasters and ourselves. Let's welcome Tom Dowd as he presents a Ride in the Elevator discussion to success.
Today's goal is to learn how to deliver an effective elevator speech. But why do we need an elevator speech? Why do you have to have one prepared? Well, a colleague and I were working out in a hotel gym in Charlotte, North Carolina. And there was our CEO of 300,000 people. No big deal, we all had our headsets on. We were doing our own thing. My colleague and I finished our workout, get on the elevator, and in came a hand that stopped the door. We didn't have 2 minutes. We had 2 floors. What is an elevator speech? Anybody?
Elevator speech is to convey a lot of information in a short period of time to draw in somebody's curiosity.
Okay. Anyone else?
90 seconds to give the first impression.
90 seconds. We'll see if that's the right number or not. We'll figure it out. It's you in a nutshell. How big that nutshell is, it's subjective. But why is it important for Toastmasters to have an elevator speech? Anybody?
You never know when you'll be in that situation when you'll have to basically give a really quick overview of yourself or your life or your accomplishments.
Yeah, so Toastmasters teaches us to think quickly on our feet. It teaches us prepared speeches, but anywhere in between does it teach us how to talk about ourselves. A little bit with the icebreaker. But we're going to talk about how to have that conversation have meaning for you as Toastmasters and also as officers. Was there a point someone else wanted to include? So as we continue to build this out, it is who you are, what you do, where we hope to go or do, and how we can share our interests with others. What it is not. It is not a sales pitch. The forcing of our interests or ourselves onto others is transparent and very thin. And a lot of people are just going to have difficulty trying to figure out who you really are. So, because it is not a sales pitch from this point forward, I guess it's going to be kind of difficult for me to sell you some books. So see me at the spring conference. I have some in my backpack. Do you want one now? It's important to get over the notion that this elevator thing, is a speech. I heard that the average elevator speech takes, how long?
104 seconds.
104 seconds, because you're the one who told me. I heard it was 104 seconds. Can you provide enough information to someone you'd like to be interested in you in 104 seconds? First impressions can be made in as little as 7 seconds. So it's time to change that mindset that this thing is a short-sighted pitch and start changing your mindset to start thinking in terms of a long-term relationship, and this thing is just the beginning. What are you and what do you do? Well, I am not a banker, I'm not a business person, I'm not a teacher, I'm not a fundraiser, I'm not a Toastmaster, I'm not a Toastmaster officer. Why? Because I just labeled myself. And your audience might say, so what? Who cares? I'm in a room of Toastmasters. Me too. And so when you start thinking about it that way, you have to get it into a point of giving someone the reason to care. Well, if I can't say what I do, then I'll come up with something pithy. So if I can no longer say that I am a professional development coach, I can then say I transform people into who they really want to be. You're all laughing at my company mantra, by the way. Pithy and pitchy. I instantly disengaged you in this conversation because it's no longer a conversation. It's not a two-way conversation when I say, I transform people, because it's not a conversation at that point. What are you waiting for? You're waiting for my sales pitch. You're on your heels right now digging in saying, here it comes, he's going to jam his message down my throat and try to sell me something. There's a reason why I didn't come out in the beginning. Talking about elevator speeches, I bet some of you thought I was going to give you a 1 or 2 minute elevator speech to start with as an example. There's a reason why I didn't. I didn't have to. I know I'm talking about presentations on giving a presentation, but Ravi was able to do it for me. Your success in building a relationship comes when you can understand your audience. Remember, we've talked all day about understanding your audience. What drives them? What makes them tick? It helps even more when you have others spread your message for you. It's about who you're talking with. And this only comes about when you ask questions and when you're being curious and when you provide value to them. Thus, the rhetorical questions in the beginning during the introduction hopefully got you thinking just a little bit of the value this thing that we're doing right now can be of you. Hopefully, meeting your goals and what you want to accomplish. What are we trying to accomplish with this discussion right now? We're trying to accomplish having you deliver more effective elevator speeches. We don't want to be too rehearsed. We don't want to be just simply winging it. We want to be somewhere in between. But let's use job interviews as an example. The king of all elevator speeches. I've seen far too many people say in a job interview, when they're asked, what's your greatest accomplishment? Freeze. Is there a right or a wrong answer?
No.
Will anyone know what your greatest accomplishment is?
Only if you tell me.
No. Then articulate and formulate a strong answer. Have that clear message moving down that path to what one of your accomplishments is. Whether it's overcoming a business challenge, achieving a stretch goal, or collaborating with business partners to overcome a business problem. Especially in a job interview, this self-centered question is really a nod to the value you can add back to that organization. You must understand and relate to your audience. It's the same thing with an elevator speech. Until you find that connecting point, these things are just words. I'm a banker, I'm a speaker, I'm a ... Many people in their head are saying, me too, so what, who cares, gotta go. You might also hear the term elevator pitch. And again, you get that defensive reaction. And I'm instantly drawn to this negative connotation because somebody is going to try to sell me something or try to get me to buy something. Even when you have these smooth marketers that ask you the open-ended question, or those closed-ended questions that have you answer yes to everything, you ever hear those? That's not an elevator speech, that's a sales pitch. Your elevator pitch, elevator speech, elevator discussion, because that's really what it should be this two-way conversation. And that's just the beginning part of this thing. By the way, talking about the weather, even when there's 5 feet of snow and it's minus 14 on my ride here, is not how you want to start an elevator speech. Because it does nobody any good unless you're talking about the safety of the roads that are out there. If you have a particular goal, and we'll talk about what some of those goals might be. But just to have a conversation, something we have in common, talking about the weather isn't going to get you to where you want to be. The first secret to an elevator speech. Everyone ready?
Yes.
You want to write this down? Smile. Enjoy it. You'll never get this same moment talking to this group of people today. Whether it's a group of people or one person, be warm. Enjoy it. Have some fun. Be engaging. Have people want the desire to continue to have this conversation with you. I realize this seems basic, but how simple a piece that we often miss out on because we're so tense of, I've got to have an elevator speech ready. You'll be successful when you formulate your message on why it matters to them. How you, your products, your services, all of this, how those connect to them. And the chance that this little thing we've got going in this conversation might be able to keep moving just a little bit better towards the right direction we want it to move in. When I lost my job in June 2013, after being with the same organization for 23 years, I had to hit the job search market. And I had to hit networking and job-seeking groups. And I went from Maine all the way down to Florida as both a trainer and a job seeker. And you look at this, you see this scared, deer in the headlight look at the groups that we were sitting with. And many of the people felt helpless. What did they want? They wanted a job. They wanted a lead. They wanted answers. So as their trainer, what did I give them? Questions. I wasn't going to give them the answer. They were, you get this look, you're sitting around a table, 20 plus people, and they think that they're in competition with each other because we're all looking for jobs, and at the time the jobless rate was 7.6%. 12, 14 million people out of work. Yeah, there's a little competition going on out there. Instead, I took a different direction. I said, I'm going to connect the dots for these people. And I'm going to ask them questions. And I'm going to ask them questions such as, what brought you here? What can anyone in this room do to help you get you where you want to be? What field of work are you looking in? Anyone in this room know anyone in that field? And all of a sudden at the table, 20 plus people start sharing information because they saw the value that was in it for them. And they started providing solutions for each other instead of sitting there saying, I want a job. Most ended up landing a job because someone in that room knew someone who knew someone else. 85% of all jobs are because someone knows somebody else. And I knew that, and I was helping them to get it. So what's this have to do with elevator speeches? Everything. Although I was out of work, I was selfishly looking for leads myself, I turned it around to the audience, and I wanted to make sure that they saw the value in having me in that room. I could then take the information that they provided and give responses back based off the information that they provided, which actually helped me to sell some books. But the best part is, that was my first 2 books. Those conversations, they wrote my first report. Because it was of value to them, and they provided me information, and I was able to get value out of it. You have to understand, it is no longer about you. And it's the same thing in Toastmasters. We come in, we do our icebreaker, we have this, and every speech up until probably 10 or 15 speeches later, it's all about me. My message I want to put onto you. But what you start to find out is, as a speaker, it's no longer about me. You don't have to pay attention to me. You can tune me out very easily. It's all about you. And that's what an elevator speech is all about. And you'll find these conversations change pretty significant. So when you're having an elevator speech, you also need to have a delivery goal. And what is a delivery goal? It is what you want to accomplish before that conversation takes place. Your success is contingent on that person listening and contingent on that person being engaged. And if they start looking at their watch, you've got a problem. If you are doing all the talking, you've got a problem. But we want this personal connection. What if you don't have one? Then ask. Ask questions. Be curious. Figure out what brought you all here today. That's your starting point. And if you don't know what brought you here today, ask someone, excuse me, why am I here today? You want to find that personal connection. Even as Toastmasters, we think we're very interesting and have interesting topics. Droning on and on will lose that audience, even if it's a one-on-one elevator speech. Your delivery goal starts with being a better listener and starting to integrate the points that people are making back into your outcome goal. In your outcome goal, all of us will have one, and we'll get to that in just a moment. But your delivery goal is simply to be a better conversationalist. People are judging you whether you like it or not. We're sitting in this room, not just the speakers, but the people you're sitting next to, the people you're socializing with. In social networking situations, people are judging you whether we like it or not. Our delivery goal needs to be gracious. I want to be gracious when I'm talking to people. I don't want to be too quick to leave a conversation. I also don't want to be the one who's occupying all of their time and dominating either. And that's a skill, believe it or not. So let's talk about outcome goals. You need to know what you want the outcome to be before you have this conversation. Setting clear outcome goals helps you to focus that conversation on just a few points and allows you to narrow your focus into well-formulated questions when you know how you want this thing to end. But many spontaneous conversations happen around elevator speeches. They're chance meetings. How do I quickly know what my goal is if I'm just running into someone and I didn't know I was going to do that? Be prepared. Know it ahead of time anyway, and practice. Just like you would with any speeches or any table topics you have, you're grabbing from things that you already know. In fact, go ahead and look at the handouts that you have. And in the first part there, take some time after this presentation to write down some sentences for each of the bullets that are out there, just like you would in a Toastmasters speech. Are you trying to inform, persuade, entertain, sell something, or simply just developing yourself? All of these are options, and you can write out some questions and comments about what you want to accomplish, but you need to know what your goal is, because if you're just going to blah, 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 you're going to take the conversation nowhere, and that person's going to lose their engagement pretty quickly. I meet with someone at my company once a month, 30 minutes. I do it simply to maneuver through the complexity of the organization. It's large. But my elevator speech at that point is simply to develop myself and to understand what's going on within the organization, possibly bring some information back to others. So what do? My elevator speech is this long. Hi, my name is Tom Dowd. This is who I am for the company. This is what I've done. This is why I like to meet with people. Love to hear what you can offer to help me out. And then it becomes all about them. In 35 minutes, I might speak for 5. In that half-hour conversation, I'm always speaking for just a couple minutes. And I get to ask questions and be curious. But this elevator speech, they walk out of there saying, wow, who is this guy? I hope. Because it's all about them. And I learned that the third person I ever met with, and I've been doing this now for 8 or 9 years, once a month, 30 minutes minimum. And I meet this guy and I say to him, after the 30 minutes, oh, man, this is great, I learned so much from you, you're fantastic. And he said, stop. I said, but no, thank you, I learned so much. He said, stop. He said, first of all, I wouldn't have taken this appointment if I didn't want to meet with you. And he said, second, we love to talk about our own business. And it instantly turned to me of, it's about him. Let it be about him. In every conversation since, there was no anxiety. I don't care what level they are in the organizations. I'm now having a conversation, and they're talking about the stuff that they love, and that's usually themselves. And it becomes a whole lot easier. But how do you make that first impression? You need to know who you are and how you want to be described. Does your whole world revolve around your job or your trade? And by the way, there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that at all. But if that's the case, you need to ask yourself, will anyone care if that is the case? Or will they just simply say, well, that's nice. So we can't be so generic to say, well, I'm a trainer. I can't be so pithy to say, oh, hell to transform. But it's time to break away from this what I do traditional responses and questions and comments that we make. It's time to now have that lasting impression. And that starts by believing in what you're talking about. Believing in who you are and how you want to be described and the things that you've accomplished. And let me give you an example. I am a speaker, trainer, author, and coach, which has very little meaning to you at this very moment. But when I do this, I come alive and I get inspired when I finally see that my clients get it. And you see that look in their eye and they're like, I did this. That's when I get motivated and inspired, and that's why I like doing what I'm doing. You also need to know what your goals are. And you need to narrow those goals down to something observable. Sure, I'm here to teach about elevator speeches. I'm here to share the words on Toastmasters. Maybe I'm here to sell you a few books. See me at the springtime. But none of these goals can all be the same. They can't be the same equal weighting. You need to narrow it down a little. So let's talk about elevator speeches that were here. The others are simply just subplots to that. So take the subplots and let them go away. And that allows you, with that outcome goal and making the first impression, it now allows you to narrow that down to what you want it to be, and you can concentrate on. Don't let the subplots get in your way. Another thing in making a first impression is learn to listen. It's a two-way dialogue. In order to do this, you need to ask effective questions. You need to listen to what they're talking about. You get a chance to be curious. You can direct the conversation with the questions that you're asking. And you can start with the basics. Because you don't want to startle this person. And anytime you've ever been in a situation where you're networking, you're talking, you know that elevator speeches are the norm, they're going to expect you to say, hi, my name is, and this is what I do. So don't startle them. It's okay to say, what do you do? Where do you work? Congratulations, you are now past step one of the elevators. But now it's time to get them engaged. And you can ask questions to get them engaged of how did you choose this field? What inspired you to get into it? Now we want to get them passionately connected to what they're doing, on why they got involved in the first place. And you can ask the question, why'd you get involved in the first place? How'd you get started? But I haven't been involved in this conversation yet in relating to what I want to accomplish in my elevator. So what keeps you involved is where you can start getting these things. These are the connections starting to happen now. Why do you wake up every single day thinking about what you do? And the smile, the enthusiasm, the passion starts to bring them into your world now. By emotionally connecting with the person you're speaking to. Think of it as this triangular relationship. You, them, and the interest. And now we're connecting all those dots together. It's about making sure you get your interests out there, but in a way that meets for them. So I'm sitting with a bunch of high school students going over job interviews. And I typically ask the question, if you could be any type of tree in the world, what would it be and why? And I got the typical maple, oak, birch answers. Then I got to the person I perceived to be the troublemaker. He stood up and he said, I'd be a cactus. Now, is cactus a real tree? I have no idea. He said, because I'm prickly, and no one knows me. But every once in a while, a little animal will burrow in and start to feed off of me. And then I'll start to feed off of them. I wish more people would get to know me. And he sat down. Besides making rash judgments, there are lessons in here about being memorable. What truly makes us human is emotion. And we need to emotionally connect with the audience. Although I have kids, although I've been a kid, I needed to find a way to relate, to talk to this class. And this kid brought it out of me. I had no way of being able to get through to this group until he came out and did that. I took everything I expected to teach and I threw it out the window, and we spent the rest of the time talking about how to emotionally connect with people in a job interview. And I would have never been able to get to that point unless I was able to relate to him and not force my message onto others. Job interviews in the traditional elevator speech. Job interviews are the same as a traditional elevator speech. The traditional elevator speech says, here's my education, here's my employment, here are my skills. Anyone in HR? You hear that all the time in interviews? In the traditional elevator speech, we might as well come out with this generic information because it's the same as an elevator speech. The simple traditional elevator speech is the same as a job interview. Hi, my name is Tom Dowd. I graduated from the University of Delaware with a communication degree. I've been in the banking world for 24 years, and I have no financial skills, so I became a speaker. I'm just kidding. I can count to 100. It's a one-dimensional, one-directional conversation when you're doing it that way, and I might as well have just come out and say blah, blah, blah. To have an effective and memorable elevator speech, we need to differentiate ourselves. You don't have to be obvious by coming out saying, I was a communication major because I like to communicate. Let me give you an example. I actually picked my major, communication, alphabetically. Didn't like accounting, didn't like to dissect frogs, so biology was out. Everybody was in business, so I chose communication. But I stayed with communication because of the interpersonal and organizational concentration. I learned why some companies survived and others didn't. I found the benefits of how people relate to each other in small group settings, and many, many other huge dividends that paid off for me in learning to become a better people manager, learning how to maneuver through corporate cultures, especially when my 28,000 person organization turned into a 300,000 person organization overnight. That's why I have such a personal interest in teaching people how to be students of their own organization. It teaches them, too, how to relate to others effectively, how to maneuver through the complexity of corporate cultures, how to work together while still differentiating themselves. You see, all of that is a personal story that sticks. What's my major? Oh, come on. What was my major? I was going to walk out because I had that point just went, woo. All right, so now I want you guys to look at the handout that was out there. And we're going to start with your employment. We're going to talk about your education. We're going to talk about the skills. And I want you to turn that into a short story. And I want you to have personal stories that are attached to it. And then we'll spend just a couple minutes doing this. So jot some down, and then we'll have somebody come up and share. And I'll share someone else while you're writing. You can continue writing, but I'll share someone else's story from Portland. So the guy comes up here and says, you know, my parents owned a Chinese restaurant, so I had to go every single day to this restaurant, and I'd be sitting at the table playing with the little sugar packets. And I would make buildings out of these sugar packets. And college and becoming an engineer because of that. 15 seconds, and he has hooked like that. That's adding personal stories to your tradition, the traditional answers we typically get. And I remember it 6 weeks later. All right, who wants to give a shout? For those who don't know you, introduce yourself.
I'm Paula Baines. I'm VP Membership and VP Public Relations for the Bangor Toastmasters. I've been belonging almost 2 years now. So here's a question. Do you think I'm shy?
Yes.
Outwardly, no. Inwardly, yes.
I was, quite a bit. And when I ask that question now, people don't believe me. Why? Because I push beyond the parameters I had set for myself. I used to be the one that would cling to my mother, even at basketball games. Why don't you go sit by your friends? Nope, couldn't do that. So my parents moved me at the end of my junior year. Brand new high school, senior year. At that moment, when she managed to talk my guidance counselor out of communications class, speech class, whew, thank God, thank God. But what did I go on to major in? Broadcasting. Because I realized I had to push myself beyond the boundaries I had set for myself. I love to connect with people. I can speak, and I'm a little nervous now, but I can speak in front of them. But if you send me to an after hours at business chamber, I'm like, where's the food? Oh, hi, nice to meet you. And then I would move around. So my shyness is still there, but I haven't pushed myself to it. Past it. Here's my experience. Degree in broadcasting, 26 years ago, Maine. Various diverse experience. Public relations, volunteer, administrative assistant. My job is ending next month, and I'm pushing myself beyond the next boundary. I'm going to start my own professional assistant, virtual assistant business, because I am tired of being let go from a job.
Well done. So let's continue to connect these dots. All right, so we're learning to make a first impression. We're moving away from this traditional approach to the things that I like to do. We're adding personal stories in there. We're starting to influence others. And that's the relatable piece. That's not us jamming our products or services or our interest down someone else's throats. This is a part of connecting. So again, on the handouts themselves. We're going to start with, what do you sell? What are your services? What do you want others to be interested in, whether it's your business, whether it's Toastmasters related as an officer, what do you want them to know? And again, figure out what your goal is before you answer these, and write down one or two or three sentences. What are the things you want people to know that you sell or the services you have to offer? Now, what are the benefits that he or she or features that people can get from those products, services, or interests? And even if you're talking about Toastmasters, what can someone get from your interest in it? What are they going to benefit from? Write down a couple of those answers. And you're not going to be able to answer this question, but it's one you will based off the answers someone gives you to your elevator speech and responses, is what problem can you solve for them? And if you're curious and relating back to the audience, you then be able to say, here's what I can offer to you, but that doesn't come in until after you've learned about them, and now I'm here to solve your problem. Because at the end of the day, an elevator speech can be, I'm there for you. I can solve this. And this happens a lot with elevator speeches of, we try too hard to sell or market on the front end. The sales takes care of itself when you're able to connect with that person on the back end and say, I can solve your problem for you. So I was hired by a 23-year-old to boost her resume. She hired me because she said there wasn't anything special about her, and it was hurting her chances of finding a job. When I do resumes, I don't just gather all their information together and just write it for them. I hold their hand and we do it together, and we talk about strengthening competencies, skills, and getting into what they've really accomplished. She said, and I quote, "I have no accomplishments." She needed a little help. With a little prodding, we were able to put down some of those key accomplishments, and by the end of the session, she walked out saying, and I quote, "I'm pretty special. I had no idea I had that in me." My job is to have the client find their own shining star themselves. And it's these types of personal stories that humanize this interaction. If I was to tell you this in an elevator speech type setting, and this can start to influence others. So who wants to take a shot of giving what they can do for product services? Sally, come on.
Hi,
Hello.
I'm Sally Boggs, and I'm here as a Toastmaster. Now, what can I do, say, or be that will inspire you to let Toastmasters improve your life?
I'm a little shy. Who's
What
that?
can I do?
Tell me a little bit about what Toastmasters. What is it?
It was started for people that are a little shy.
Oh, yeah.
It was started in the YMCA. And the people of the YMCA were young people, just like you, who were looking for careers, just like you. And they got together and practiced communication, which is what we're doing right now. Want to give it a try?
Yeah.
We have meetings, and they're free.
All right, I'll be there. What
Come
time?
as my guest, 6 o'clock on Wednesdays.
I've been there. Yeah. Message simplicity. In order to deliver an effective elevator speech, we must first start by delivering our message in a clear and concise manner. We all agree? It's something we learn in Toastmasters. Be very conscious of the time constraints and be respectful of other people's times. But what I mean by that is there is no set limit for elevator speeds. That 104 seconds, that 7 seconds, it goes to the wayside. Sally didn't come up here and say, "Okay, go, we have 2 minutes." Don't worry about the time. Worry about being clear and concise. What you need to figure out is the skill of learning to start talking and learning to stop talking. Regardless of how long the speech is, we want to follow this clear formula that works for any presentations, even in elevator speeches. So after you've listened to the person, you've engaged them, we're having this conversation, we mentally noted some of those connection points out there, we can then connect back and talk about our employment, our skills, our experiences, and things that interest us. But remember, it is why is it of interest to them? What's in it for them, not what's in it for me. There's a speech model that is taught in Toastmasters and is often referred to as 1-3-1. Strong introduction, 3 points or stories to support that message, and a memorable conclusion. That introduction should be the point I can't forget. I need to remember, if I remember nothing else, it is at that absolute point. The 3 supporting pieces can be who's, what, where, why, when, all of those supporting pieces that will help to understand what that point is, and then to wrap up the call to action. That's one presentation, one floor of your elevator. You might have all these other things you want to talk about, these conversations, and they can go all over the place. Those are different floors on the elevator. Stay on this one floor. 1 point, 3 points to compartmentalize this, and then that memorable conclusion. Let me give you an example and elaborate on what I was talking to Sally about. I joined Toastmasters because I was painfully shy and introverted. It is a great program for people interested in improving their communication, their confidence level, and their leadership skills. There's the point. Over a period of time, I gained enough confidence to enter some speech competitions, and I had some success. My boss at work started to tell me that my communication was improving. I was starting to be asked to help others improve themselves, which led me down this path to get involved in professional development. It made me eligible for the National Speakers Association, and it led me to start my own business. Anyone interested in joining Toastmasters can improve their communication skills and confidence level and leadership skills. They just have to join. What was that, 40 seconds, 45 seconds? Clear, concise. It doesn't have to be a set time. Introduction, 3 points to support it, and a memorable conclusion. But let's talk about the do's and don'ts of elevator speeches. And I like to start with the negative. Don't be vanilla. I'm a bricklayer, I'm an artist, my conversation stop. Avoid making it look like you don't want to be here. Have you ever been in a conversation with someone and their eyes are darting above you and around you because they don't want to be talking to you? It's hard to engage someone, and it's hard to stay engaged in that conversation. As basic as that sounds, be present, be engaged, have that conversation, enjoy it, but look the person in the eyes. Put away your cell phone. As obvious as this sounds, in today's day and age, in an elevator speech, I could just be sitting here doing this. I am not engaged. I am not present. Unless I'm giving you connections. And if I pull this out and start giving you connections, that's the greatest thing ever. And that helps with networking and it helps with the elevator speech. But put it away, even if you think you're being innocent with it. It's just like coming up here and presenting in any Toastmasters. Take the things off that can be distracting to someone else and put it away. I also tell you to don't be professional. What do I mean by that? We get so caught up in being politically correct. Sure, don't curse. But don't be so uptight to not be yourself. We get so... All I have to do is say elevator speech to someone and they freeze. There are certain people I can watch them freeze, and I was one of them. And you might be able to say, hey, did you know such and such is going to be in the room? I was down in Charlotte for another meeting, and I don't drink coffee, so I was waiting for my buddy to get some coffee, and there was this guy over here, and I'm like, are you Dan Marino? He said, yeah. I'm like, hi, my name's Tom Dowd, glad to meet you. And then just started chatting. Regardless of who that person is, you can be yourself. Be that personable person you want to be, and don't get so caught up in being politically correct. And finally, don't overmarket. This isn't your time to oversell. That can happen later on, but it only happens effectively after you've established a relationship. The relationship long-term component, those connection points are more important than anything else. So do build a relationship. Do build that lasting relationship. If it's done right, this is just the beginning of the relationship that's out there. Connect with your audience at different levels, and that's emotional levels, personal levels, professional levels. You have an opportunity, but don't get caught up in being in just one of those levels. Also, brag if it's a fact. I like to say if it's relevant, brag if it's a fact. And what I mean by that is you don't want to go up and down the aisle saying, hi, this is who I am, look at me, because this isn't about me. But if you have some facts that are about you, there's nothing wrong with doing it. Our newest distinguished Toastmaster in this division is David Tucker. If you ever see David, congratulate him. He'll be hopefully awarded in this spring conference. But if I was David Tucker and talking to you guys out here in the hall and socializing, I might not come out and say, hi, I'm David Tucker and I'm a distinguished Toastmaster. But I would like David to say, hi, I'm David. I've been in Toastmasters for quite a few years and I worked really hard. I was fortunate enough to get my distinguished Toastmaster this year. There's nothing wrong with that. It's not bragging if it's a fact and it has context behind it. We get too shy sometimes, too humble sometimes. Now, we also get the other side of that sometimes and brag too much, but there's a nice balance, have context behind it. The other thing is have a notebook nearby. I carry a notebook with me everywhere. People are like, you always have that backpack. What's in there? You'd be surprised. Yeah, anyway. 5 of each. They're going fast. I have an umbrella in there too. But what I have in there is a notebook. And it has all of my speech ideas, things that have just crossed my mind, and just random thoughts that I have. I put it in there and I let it go in there. This notebook, whether it's a diary, a journal, call it what you want, but it gives you a chance to say, here are some little stories to share with people. Those little stories we all remember, but we don't when the time comes. When you start to write them down, you remember them just a little bit more. It also gives you a chance to analyze. If you're anything like yourself, like myself, I'm very self-aware of who I am, and I overanalyze myself. I'm psychotic sometimes. But I talk about what went well, and I talk about the things that didn't go well. And so the next time I have a situation to network with someone or give an elevator speech, I'll be able to be a little bit more effective at it. Give yourself the feedback. That self-analysis will help you to move further, and that notebook allows you to do that. So what can I do for you? I found that when I teach people how to deliver their elevator speeches or help them with their resumes or their interviewing, we still get caught back here. And what I mean by back here is the history. This is who I am. This is who I was. I was in the financial industry for this many years, and this is what I've done, and we stop. And we live in the past, and that past becomes who we are. That past becomes our elevator speech. It becomes our interview. It becomes our resume. This is who we are. No. That history is your starting point. The rest is forward looking. And what about you? Tell me more about you. I like to use forward-looking type questions and comments. Some examples might be, have you thought about this? When you're starting to get into that solution part, or what are some of the roadblocks that are getting in your way? Now I'm getting to their problem. And that's how I can get to their solution, and how I might be able to share that solution with them. Toastmasters, elevator speeches, all of this is about connecting with your audience. But when you can get these like passions, these like interests together in a clear and concise manner, you start to figure out who some of those like-minded people are, and you start to make those connections. You're not going to connect with everyone. It's impossible. But it will allow you to ask some questions, get some comments, and make some connections that you would have never thought you'd make connections. And that comes about when you are unique, when you're memorable, when you can be effective at just being who you are. And that's really what this thing is all about. You see, elevator speeches were named for being these chance encounters that you have to get your point across very quickly. And we do need to be clear and concise. However, the direction of the elevator should be horizontal. It shouldn't be vertical. Although your goals, yes, this is a selfish part of the program, your goals are critical in establishing what matters to you, how you communicate that is critical to your success. Your elevator speech is this two-way conversation about partnership and support and what I can do for you. And then all of a sudden you can come back and confidently convey your thoughts, ideas, and opinions on how it relates to them. Because an elevator speech at the end of the day is why it matters.